Welcome to The Professor is Live. I'm Mark Salisbury, and yes, that's Rico down in the corner, our producer and occasional reality check. To get us started, it's time for today's What Could Go Wrong?
So, how much does that car cost?
That depends. What's your budget?
Ooh, that's sneaky.
Just trying to find you the perfect fit.
What do you make of this, Rico?
Well, nothing builds trust like not knowing the price.
Indeed. And somehow, according to our upcoming guest, it became normal in higher education.
So college, come for the learning and stick around for the mystery billing.
Exactly. Today, we're asking a question that families ask all the time and rarely get answered clearly. And that question is, how much does college really cost? And why is it so hard to find out? And guess what? I clicked the wrong button.
No, that never happens here.
Welcome to The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury, Professor of Computer Science at the University of St. Thomas. In each lively 25-minute episode, Mark and producer Rico Smart dive into topics shaping our world, featuring expert interviews and engaging live audience participation. Discover groundbreaking ideas for the future and timeless wisdom you can't afford to forget, all infused with humor and charm. Leave every episode feeling inspired, informed, and optimistic about what lies ahead. For more bragging about this show, go to theprofessorislive.com.
Okay, Rico, we really got to get better help around here.
Well, might have to pay more.
I think you might have something there. Well, anyway, welcome back. Our guest, who you're just going to love his name, has spent decades inside higher education and the last several years of helping families decode college pricing. He's the co-founder and CEO of Tuition Fit. Let's bring him in. Welcome, everyone, to The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury. With Mark Salisbury. And if you're following that, our guest today, as I know, is Mark Salisbury. And so Mark has actually reached out and we've communicated a little over the years, and we thought it would be hopefully an informative and maybe even inspiring program today when we get together. And so, Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself. I feel like I know you already, but we haven't actually talked that much in real life. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
No, this is one of those very funny things where you're just on LinkedIn, minding your own business, and then a name pops up and you go, wait, that sounds like, but that's not me. Wait a minute. This person's in academia. They have a advanced degree. That sounds like me, but it's not me. What is going on here? Anyway, so I am also Mark Salisbury, and I'm from Minnesota, where you now live. Grew up there. I spent roughly 30 years working on college campuses in a variety of roles. I was in college athletics for a while. I was in college admissions for a while. I was a director of institutional research and assessment for a while, which is the, sort of the nerd czar, if you want to give it a title on a college campus. And then for the last 8 years or so, I have been working outside of the hallowed campus grounds, but helping the public understand how this whole thing actually works, from college pricing, the financial aid system, how to make the most of a college experience, what are the things that students do that actually drive positive learning? What are the things that colleges do that help their students drive positive learning? That's the stuff I've been doing for the past 8 years.
Wow. Okay. And for those of you who are still wondering what this show is about, you're with us. So it came because we have the same name. And Mark Salisbury in the United States is not that common of a name. It is in England, by the way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so so a lot of times, I'm the only Mark Salisbury on campus, and that kind of thing. And so I had a friend growing up, and his name was Jim Smith, and that's a pretty common name, and so common that he used to go to these meetings, like in South or North Dakota. I can't remember where now, but it would be the Jim Smith Club. And there would literally be thousands of people that would go to that. And so I've never had that experience before, but we're documenting it where I'm not the only one in our virtual room that is Mark Salisbury.
This is the beginning of something very special, right?
Yes, it is. I like that. And I don't know if you've had this experience. People would mispronounce my name. That's one of the things that I do is I really try to pronounce people's names because they'll go, oh, it's Mark Salisbury. And I'll go, no, if you were in London, it would be Salisbury, right?
That's
that would
right.
be the way it would be pronounced. But let's get back to what you do here and talk a little bit about your work. And I know one of the things you actually have an email address that's Tuition Fit and around the cost and things. And I know this is a passion for you. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, it starts from a very sort of, I think, non-controversial place. Higher education on balance is a good thing. More education is a good thing. And most people are going to need to keep learning after high school. I don't know of anybody who, when they hit 18, they just didn't need to learn anything else the rest of their life. I don't know any of those. The thing that has frustrated the public, and it just seems to get worse every year, and it's been for decades, is tell me what my price is going to be at your college. Not easy to find out because there's a sticker price. And for several decades now, colleges have gotten on this, sort of train where they think you got to have a high sticker price because people will think you're not very good if you're cheap.
Yeah.
So, but guess what? Nobody will pay that sticker price. But we get them in the door by getting them to think we're great because we're expensive. And then we throw the love at them by giving them a bunch of discounts, right?
Yeah.
We call them scholarships. We call them grants. It's really Kohl's cash. I mean, it's not actual money, but we give them if a discount was only $5,000 off of a $25,000 thing, okay. But now when we're talking about colleges that are $100,000 a year and the discount is $50,000, now it really matters if I know, is that a school I can afford for 4 years or not? The public is so frustrated with this. And it's driving a lot of the is college worth it conversation, which more and more people are thinking it's not because they're looking at the sticker prices, which nobody pays. So I started the Tuition Fit project really on I wouldn't say a lark, but pretty dang close, which was let's just build a way for the public to share financial aid offer letters that they receive from the college they applied to. We'll redact the private information. And we'll just create a sort of central hub where if you share what you got, we'll show you what other students like yours got from whatever schools they got them from. Yeah. So it doesn't sound anything different than what Glassdoor did to hiring, right? You go to Glassdoor to find out what are the salaries that people are making in other jobs. That was a crowdsourced project. Same thing's true with the Tuition Fit project. Just crowdsource that pricing information because it's literally not available anywhere else, and then make it possible for the public to solve that pricing conundrum. And if somebody starts this process saying, I got X amount of dollars, which colleges can I afford? Historically, you could never tell them that answer. Now with the Tuition Fit data, you can.
Wow. Yeah. I know it kind of vibrated up here because you're in Iowa now, right?
That's
and
right.
About 10 years ago, my B12 is one of our private schools up in the west corner of Minnesota tried this experiment of just rolling out, this is what the price is, right, for everybody. And then, and of course, it came in about half what they're advertising it is, and everyone, the schools and people I talked to, in the Twin Cities areas were going, I wonder how this is going to work, right? Because one of the things, and I got to know a little bit about this because I put in a stint in administration, and hiring your people that recruit and market and all that stuff is a big deal, and they make a lot of money. And so I asked, why don't we think about this? And the guy goes, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because we do those two things you're talking about, right? We do the thing where we say, put a high price tag on it, and people are going to view that as, value added. That's going to be very valuable. And then you give them the discount and you can't afford not to go. Right. And so they come in the door, and it isn't just us. People can see what school I teach at. And I'm very proud to be at this school. I'm just saying that pervades our thinking in higher education, that's a strategy. And people will point to numbers and say, that's really true. That's how that works. So how's the psychological part of this? How do you see us getting out of this way of telling people, what the cost of education is?
Well, the example you just brought up is a wonderful exploration into the psychology of all of this stuff, both at the level of individual psychology and then at the level of sort of social psychology and organizational psychology. So what you talk about in the higher ed world, they talk about it as a tuition reset. And there are schools every year now that do this, where nobody has paid their sticker price for a couple of decades. Yeah. And they start to figure out that, we're actually never getting a chance to close a deal with a particular student because they see the sticker price and right out of the gate, stop talking to us, right? Yeah. This notion that the high sticker price and the high discount, that works as a psychological ploy. It's called the Chivas-Regal effect for people who want to look it up on Wikipedia. But that actually only works for a certain subset of the population who's already has a certain level of affluence, for that to not be a difference maker, right? Yeah. If the actual prices of things get beyond the price range that a middle-class family could afford, or however many people are left in the middle class, which is a whole other story, then that psychology that is certainly true for the affluent doesn't actually translate anymore to that middle class group. And so there are certain examples of schools where they did the tuition reset and they did it badly and it ultimately didn't work for them down the road. Yeah. And there are other schools that did it and it actually did work down the road. But there's the psychology of this is so interesting because it's not just changing one piece. It's changing then a whole system of recruiting and enrolling and marketing your institution. And when a school just changes one piece but leaves the rest of it as is, yeah, you're begging for trouble.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what's interesting is I was reading not too long ago, and I've always suspected that this has been happening to me, but a lot of companies, a lot of big companies are giving you individual prices to you based on your profile, right? So
surveillance pricing.
Yes. And so the price that I get, at a major retailer might not be the price that you get. And a lot of it is how likely are you going to back out of this deal if the price is less or more, these kinds of things. And so and we're doing that with technology, right? We're being able to track your preferences, track your past purchases, and then build a profile like, that Mark Salisbury in Iowa, he's going to demand a very cheap, price. He's going to want a price or he's backing out. But that Mark Salisbury in Minnesota, we can sock him because he doesn't seem to know what the prices really are. So I would think that that kind of acceptance by us, and because it's not against the law to do this, in the retail space would spill over into educational space. What do you think about that?
Well, it's been in higher education pricing for decades, and the FTC was going to come down really hard on this during the last administration, right? The Biden administration, but they didn't quite get all the way there before it turned over. And new administration, new principles, new priorities. Now that's just off the table. But this notion of surveillance pricing is a real thing, and it's very common in online online marketplaces, online on Amazon, the big online stores, if you will. And the problem, of course, for the consumer is that the consumer doesn't see what other people paid for the same product, right? Yeah. And the same thing has been true in higher education for decades, is that the consumer doesn't see what anybody else is being charged for that same product. And higher education institutions absolutely collect all kinds of data, not just on the transcript, high school transcript and the test score and recommendations from other teachers or something in the high school, but then they collect all the financial information that they get when they submit the FAFSA, or there's another form called the CSS profile that some schools use. But then they're paying attention to every click on that school's website that you've done, and how many minutes you've been on that site, and how many pages in you've gone, and how many times you've come back, and how many times you've responded to an email inquiry or on Instagram or any of those things. They're absolutely tracking that stuff. And this is what colleges and universities call demonstrated interest. Yeah. And they track that as a construct because they absolutely jump to the idea that if you demonstrate more interest in a particular institution, then it's reasonable to assume that you'd be willing to pay more because you think it is of a higher value.
And what one piece of advice would you give our audience as a closing?
If you're in the process of thinking about higher education, university, maybe you're going to send a student there, or maybe you're going back, right? One thing we know from 60 years of research on college students is that the outcomes, both in college and after college, are a function of what you do while you're in college and are not a function of the school you go to. Over and over and over, the research demonstrates this. As soon as you start accounting for, does that student go to every class and do their homework? Do they go to the office hours and meet with their professors? Do they get involved in other things on campus that are interesting and meet their interests and spur other ideas? Versus if they just sit around in their room at night and play video games and do the bare minimum. That's the stuff that dictates life afterwards. And take that then to the next step, which is that means you could pay a lot for a college degree. You could pay a little for a college degree. You could pay for everything in between. You can actually decide what price do you want to pay, and then go forward. And you're not shutting off the opportunities that are out in front of you by making that choice. You're just not.
That's fascinating. Well, thank you, Mark, for being on our show. And
thank you, Mark, for having me.
I feel like I gotten to know a part of myself that I didn't know about before. Well, we're back. And what are your thoughts on this, Rico?
I've learned a bit. I think I'm going to have to look into that Chivas Regal theory.
Very good. I think it is interesting that our guest was also named Professor Mark Salisbury, right? Same occupation, same name, which makes it either destiny or some kind of large clerical error, I think. So, but let's go and look at lessons learned. Okay, here are the key takeaways that I see from today's conversation and why they matter. Number one is college pricing confusion is really structural. It's not accidental. Higher sticker prices are really shape perception, even though almost nobody pays them.
So the confusion, it's basically a feature.
Exactly. And any other thing which is interesting, I think, is scholarships often function like discounts, not rewards. And they change how people feel about the price, not necessarily what they pay. And then the third thing, I think, is colleges already practice personalized pricing. Clicks, visits, emails, all of it feeds this idea of demonstrated interest, which quietly influences cost.
So your college knows you better than your streaming service.
Yes, they do indeed. And then transparency actually changes behavior, but only once trust exists. So tuition fit works because shared data reveals what's normal, fair, and affordable. And finally, it's the fifth thing is that outcomes depend on student behavior rather than prestige. So effort, engagement, involvement matter more than the logo on the diploma.
Which is both comforting and surprising in a way.
Yes. And I think one of the huge things that we should take away is that we can't expect one college, no matter how good it is, to stop surveillance pricing, because that would just be a financial disaster for them. We need to find a way to have all schools to stop at the same time. All right. We want to move on and thank Mark Salisbury for being with us, the other Mark Salisbury, of course. And the other thing is, I guess when we think about it, that even people with the same name can have very different tuition bills.
And I'm betting very different browser histories.
That's true. All right. If you're navigating college decisions, remember, clarity leads to better judgment and better choices. Find more episodes at theprofessorislive.com or follow us on Spotify, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platform. See you next time.
The Professor is Live. Hosted by Mark Salisbury and produced by Rico Smart. We go live on LinkedIn, then bring the conversation straight to you as a podcast. Catch us on YouTube or Spotify for full video episodes. Or listen anytime on your favorite podcast platform. Want the inside scoop on previous shows or a chance to bring The Professor is Live to your own event? Then head to theprofessorislive.com today. The Professor is Live. With Mark Salisbury, inspiring curiosity, laughter, and learning every week. Copyright 2025. The Professor is Live. With Mark Salisbury.